creature.
Pickle.
Yes.
Hey guys, welcome out to The Prototype, only on thisweekingeek.net. And in this edition of The Prototype, well, we are donning our Assassin's Creed hoodies, we have our hidden blades, we have kunai, we have shuriken, and a naginata, and a kanabo. That's right, we are checking out Assassin's Creed Shadows. I want to send a sincere thank you to Ubisoft for providing us for review codes for this game. We are going to be discussing this game in depth in this episode of The Prototype. It has been about a week since release, so we are going to Spoiler Town. You have been warned. However, if you would like a shorter, more succinct, shorter than this thing anyway, because Alex's review was somehow 10 minutes.
A spoiler-free 10 to 15 minute talk, then you can listen to it on our regular show, which just happened this past week.
Yes, so please go check that out. So obviously, I'm joined with Alex, who reviewed this game on PlayStation or on PC rather. Ken reviewed this on Xbox Series X, and I reviewed this on PlayStation 5. And once again, before you go any further, there will be spoilers, but how we're going to break this down is we're going to look at this game from the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're not holding anything back. We're not going to be vitriolic for the sake of being vitriolic, but we are going to be honest with you, because across the three platforms, all of us had pretty vastly different experiences with this game, not just in terms of gameplay, but also in terms of performance. So we're just going to set that expectation now. So Alex was the first one of us to finish this game, and you played on PC. So all of us are going to come in right now, and let's talk about the good experiences we had with this game so far.
I can say this. I have to do just a quick tangent on my history with the series very quickly.
Yes.
In that I had never played the first games all the way through Black Flag and so on. My first Assassin's Creed game was when we were sent Odyssey to play, and I played just enough to get some of the review done. I had probably put about 10-15 hours in, and I was not as compelled to play. It wasn't my style of game at the time, and
I really loved it.
Whereas you loved it, and I was like, oh, I'll come back to that eventually. I don't get the story. I was a newbie. It wasn't really my thing. And then we got Valhalla when we got our new consoles, and I played that again. I put about 20 hours in, and I'm like, to be honest, this is really boring. I don't like this. I don't get what's going on. What's with this real world? Like they didn't do really any good job of explaining the storyline up to that point. I didn't know that it's standalone, but it's not standalone. You know what I mean? And I learned a little bit from you and hearing bits and pieces from people. And then we got Mirage during, I guess it's just after the pandemic had ended. That was 2023. No, it had ended earlier for other people, but for us, I feel like 2023 is when we no longer had full restrictions on anything anymore. And we got that. And to me, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I played, 22, 23 hours, something like that. That was for a complete playthrough. And that was to do 99% of the game. It was the right size for me. It had the right action. I got a little bit of the lore. It takes place farther in the past. It was a prequel to Valhalla, but not all the way to the back. It's not the earliest in the timeline. But I got my fill, and I was like, this is good. And then, for Shadows, I wanted to make sure that I knew the storyline of the game, and I went back and did a bit of a mixed play. I played and completely beat the original game, Assassin's Creed 1, which, interestingly enough, does not work on PC, even though I have Ubisoft Connect app and I have Ubisoft Plus, and it does not work on modern Windows 10. It does not work on modern Windows 11, even though it's offered, and nobody's using Windows 7 anymore, so I don't know how you can play this. But that being said, it was $5 on the Xbox store, and it is fully backwards compatible with, it had Xbox One X enhancements, which carry forward to Series X. So that means that it was able to play at, I guess it would have been 720p it was playing at, or maybe
Yep.
1080, or no, 720, but at 60 FPS. So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the best way you can possibly play it right now. In there's no way to really play it on PC or other consoles. So I played it, beat it. I actually liked it. Thought it was bad voice acting. Honestly, I was really surprised at how poor the voice acting was, even for the era. But I got the story. I started on the trail of figuring out, what's with the Animus, what's going on with the precursors and all this. So that let me dig deeper. Played a little bit of 2, which I owned a copy of it already from, I don't know, way back. And then I went and was able to sort of watch some YouTube videos and figure out the storylines.
Yeah, 2's a little rough.
From 3 onward, because I love those. I love the ideas behind them. There's a lot of archaic gameplay until you jump pretty much all the way to Unity, and then at Unity, you're dealing with a game that itself was sort of an experimental thing with a new engine, and then we hit Syndicate, which I really like.
Yeah, Syndicate was a lot of fun.
So I've got that game. I haven't watched the story for that. I'm playing that currently on PS5 because that's one of the games that had a PS5 patch to play it at 60 FPS at 4K.
Yep.
So I'm having a good time. I'm like, whoa, you can see that it was sort of the peak of that original stealth game era. It just it incorporated everything. But anyway, so the storylines for anybody who is new to this, I don't think you're going to be new to this, but if you are, the idea with the precursors and the Desmond story, I didn't know that it, initially that it ends after Assassin's Creed 3. And it ends and it doesn't end. You know what I mean? Like it ends and the spoiler, it's Juno, right? The precursor that was leading him on and leading and planting seeds for everybody, turns out is bad and wants to rule the world and take over. It has basically been manipulating potentially the Templars over all the years, but you don't know that. They still haven't really explained that, and has left the tech and is now sort of infiltrating the world through digital means and so on and so forth. And then you get the second wave of storylines, which is each game from Black Flag through Syndicate are people that are not connected to Desmond, but that are able to view some of his bloodline information, and then as well as some of their own that are all sort of connected, and they're all trying to find those pieces of Eden for both the Templars and in some cases the assassins themselves. And there's a little bit of back and forth there, but it's sort of floated around in ambiguity, but Juno is still connected. So that's how the connection is with the original games, as well as some of the characters are returning that didn't die out. And then you jump forward into from Origins onward, and we've got a new timeline. Well, not new timeline, but new character that is involved with trying to get the pieces of Eden and stop the Juno and the bad people. But they still haven't said what the world cataclysmic event that's happening here is, because it's not the same as what was happening at the beginning. And then we're led into the current game here, which is Shadows. And I will say this, I don't know what Shadows has to do with the rest of the games, because there is no real world aspect to it, except a couple moments where you, the player, are introduced to different, precursor avatars that appear to be more computer generated, AI elements. They don't appear to be the same as the previous precursors. Or how they're connected at all.
I would genuinely think that over the course of Shadows DLC in the future,
that'll have to be
they're gonna start adding in that
now,
stuff.
There are
because this is the first game to launch officially the Assassin's Creed Animus system. Which, you have everything in one hub.
Now, I'm guessing as you do more There is something we're going to briefly talk about, and that is some of the Animus stuff. There are multiple reward paths that do give you some encrypted data, which is text files, which is really lazy in my opinion, but it does give additional story, but not to the level we probably want. But we'll see what happens as things go on.
Yeah, basically there are four moments where you are connected to the current real world. And it is through you as a faceless avatar. They do not mention who you are. So was her name? Was it Layla or somebody in the last 3 games? I'm drawing a blank. But the character where you're at the cabin, in Valhalla, and it's the same person for Origin, Odyssey, and Valhalla. And then there wasn't a connection. Like there wasn't anything in Mirage at all. And like there was nothing, not even remotely, and you just happen to be telling a story within the world without it being somebody viewing it. But this, you are completely nameless. There's no connection. You are talking to some form of avatar that is like a computer program that is trying to prove that human free will exists, that it's organic and isn't being manipulated. And then you have an opposing force that is trying to argue with it, but they don't appear to be connected to the previous game's precursors. So there's 4 events where you see them throughout the entire game. It amounts to a total of about 7 or 8 minutes, and it's almost completely forgettable. It's almost like they are setting up the Animus network, but that's about it. So that's spoiler territory. We're not going to say what they say or anything, just that it's here, but what? Anyway, that's it. That's my background with it. I did play the game. I got 60 some odd hours in. I played it on a mixed setting of easy to medium, and I customized some stuff because you can do that pretty heavily here. I had a good time playing it, but I was stuck playing at 30 FPS at 1080p because the build that was available prior to release was heavily buggy. I had a couple hard crashes. I had multiple times where I had like the slideshow FPS where it was like barely moving at all. I was stuck in walls. I was occasionally stuck. I was stuck on a boat that was taking me out in the middle of the sea, and I couldn't leave. And I was like, I couldn't transport out, but I was able to switch characters. And then I switched characters, and I like spawned in the middle of the ocean, which I don't think you were supposed to be able to do. And then the game crashed. I've had a few events like that. I've had where you can have your cat. You can get cats for your little home base. I had a cat, I put it in the home base, and then I built houses, and it turns out I built a house on top of the cat. Now he's buried under the house, and I can't get at him. Yeah, there's a few things like that. But all things said and done that way, all the technical issues that somewhat have been ironed out with the day 1 patch have gotten better frame rate, but still not where it should be. I still had a good time. It is the best visual looking of the games, with tons of foliage and tons of weather effects. There's a lot to like here. Some of the storyline is compelling. It's more compelling than some of the previous stuff. Voice acting, top notch. Better than probably most of the previous games. The direction of the game is well done. The camera angles. It feels good to be in combat, at least personally. And I will say that I didn't feel so overwhelmed doing everything. That 60 hours sounds like a lot, but when you hear that people are putting like 100 hours into Valhalla, or more, it was like 200 hours, I think, to complete everything. You're dealing with monotony. There wasn't a ton of monotony here. There wasn't a ton of stuff that was repeated like over and over again that made it feel bad. The world looks different and everything, but there was one nagging thing at the back of my head the whole time playing, and it was, this is great, but Ghost of Tsushima was so much better 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's something we're definitely going to discuss in this, but let's kind of get rolling here with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, the good, as Alex was saying, the voice acting in this is actually quite good. I really enjoyed Naoe and Yasuke's performances. I'm
assuming you guys did both English, both of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I did the immersion mode, aka the everyone's speaking their native tongue, aka it's a mix of Japanese and Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
So aka the Kurosawa mode from Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, kind of.
That did intrigue me, but I wanted to hear the acting because I will judge a game based on its English voice acting, especially when it's this
I
high
will.
budget.
Yeah, I mean, like, they have a great Japanese voice cast. Like, I recognized some of the voices. I don't have a full cast list to actually give you a rundown, but like, if you've watched a lot of anime, you will recognize some of the Japanese voice actors.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. I'm trying to think of other things I really liked about this game. I liked how combat felt for the most part. It felt like an improvement upon previous Assassin's Creed games. I did feel like I was able to parry and do all my other things.
The parry window is really
generous.
Large.
Yeah, it's really generous.
And you can increase it. You can even increase it if you have even more trouble with that. Also, even when playing as Yasuke, nothing felt clunky or unruly in combat. Like you didn't feel like, man, my inertia.
You didn't feel like a heavy tank.
Yeah. You didn't feel like you were leaning too far or that you overcompensated. It seemed pretty precise. So like that part was great. Switching between, once you get powerful enough with both, and you want to play the different styles, either full stealth or you want to go full beefy brute force with Yasuke, you can start to feel great when you're just mowing down people.
Oh yeah, that's one thing too. The sense of power in here, depending on, like you said, your different gameplay approach is pretty great. One thing to mention, I did play with a lot of accessibility settings on. It does take out some of the minigame nonsense, which are not bad. There are things under Yasuke. You learn katas, which is a real thing you would learn like with a sword or a naginata or a kanabo or stuff like that. Okay, that's not bad. Although for Naoe, somehow they've gamified meditation, which is weird.
Even as someone who has a good sense of rhythm and also dealing with that, it just like, oh my gosh, it takes way too long to get
I just turned on autocomplete.
That.
I'm like, I don't care.
See, I didn't turn on autocomplete. I turned on the simplification, and what that does is it on the simplification mode for her meditations, it only allows up to 2 different button presses. So it's like it'll be like X, Y, or like X, triangle, X, X. It's always a pattern like that of some sort. And with Yasuke, with his kata, if you have the accessibility on for like simplified, it's literally just R1. It's either press R1, hold R1, or what is it? There's one that's like rapidly press it, but you can turn that part off too. It's literally like slow press, long press, that sort of stuff. The other thing is, I think it allows for, you won't automatically fail or get kicked out if you do the meditations, because you know how it fades out the instructions, sort of like in Final Fantasy VII when you're doing like the sit-ups and stuff. That used to piss me off when it starts to disappear when you get good. That's there. I put on some of the simplification things as well, because the puzzles, it's not like there's like deep, difficult puzzles in this, but it takes away from the flow of the game in these kind of games.
That's my main, and the things that we'll get into that whole aspect, because that's a gripe I have with just this game in general.
So the good is that there's options for this.
There's plenty of options. Anyone will be able to play it with the right set of options.
Yeah.
So, one other thing I should say about this too is you will never suffer for things to do. Although it's not as overwhelming as Valhalla
or even Odyssey.
I could see the potential to get a little overwhelming, but the things that are time consuming are not so distracting where it's like big deal. Like, for example, kill 100 Ronin, kill 100 bandits, whatever. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's going to happen naturally. I did encounter a weird issue with that, and that comes in terms of leveling. But I will say, in the good portion of this, leveling does come up fairly often and well. You can choose how to level, which is kind of nice, because like how I approach Assassin's Creed game is clear the map, do the missions. So I have a good range of abilities, a good range of gear, a good range of what I want to accomplish early on. So when I do tackle the story, I get a continuous flowing experience. as opposed to being stopped like, okay, cool, you're not powerful enough to do this, come back later in the story. So how I approach gameplay is, okay, I'm going to do as many of the side activities as I can, become powerful, use the new knowledge system, which is how this game allows you to unlock more stuff in your different trees, and then you're good to go. And
yeah, I do the four corners method, which is even if it's like super dangerous, as long as it'll let me go there, I will go to the four corners of the map to find at least one spot that I can quick travel to. And then that means that later in the game, it saves me a lot of travel time because I could just warp to a spot that's much more difficult initially. And then I conquer it that way, and then I'll go like clockwise. I'll do like a spiral towards the center of it's kind of weird how I do it, but it works for me that way. It worked here. There were moments, now obviously playing it with some accessibility stuff and some stuff on easier allowed me to
guaranteed assassinations, right?
Yeah, I don't think I turned that on.
I did, and it really helped.
I didn't turn that on because I eventually got powerful enough with my build not to. Like, the way I built myself, and for a hot tip for anybody out there that's maybe struggling and you don't necessarily want to lower your difficulty, when you're doing your character trees for your abilities, a suggestion is pick one weapon that you really like. So with Naue, I picked the Tanto, the short knives.
Yeah,
I did not like the katanas. I did not like her was it the whippy thing?
The Kuragama, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I went katanas.
Okay, so
I did Tanto and Katana.
So Tanto, I only did Tanto. I wouldn't even equip the others, just to not even bother with my head. And with the other skill trees, look at the weapons, find anything that is a global passive, because that will increase for everybody. And then I would just increase those points in there and go, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to do anything with these weapons, so I don't even need to bother with those. And then I put all the rest of my points in the one weapon that I felt comfortable with, and then did that for Yasuke once I got him as well. And basically with him, for the longest time I had the long katana, and then I eventually, near the end of the game, I switched to the giant, FU Billy Club baseball bat thing. and I was just crushing and destroying people. But and then once you get to the knowledge level of level 6 or higher, it opens up the mastery class when you open up in there, and you can individually put points into certain aspects. Like one will be like shield damage, or one will be DP, not DPS, but it'll be like critical
adrenaline gain or whatever.
And it's like 1% extra for every point you put in there. So all the points that I would normally put into weapons that I don't want to use, I put in there, making it so that I could start like one hit killing people with weapons that shouldn't be able to do it. So you can customize it your own way, and it's fun. And I find it actually more intuitive than some of the previous systems. It's also a little more deep than some of the older systems, where it's just, here is a spread out tree and you got to equip each one because the one thing that you want is really far into this tree. This felt a lot more focused on, and if you wanted to compare it to another system out there, a little more similar to what you'd see in like a God of War game.
Yeah, I would agree to that. Like, I liked the customization in this. You literally can choose how you want to play. Like, for Yasuke, I specialized in the long katana. I maxed out the Kanabo on your advice as a just in case. I've never used it though, but I am a Teppo fucking master. I am a gangster with that thing. Like, I could sniper you from across the map, and I've got certain things on my build. Hot tip for this one: get the engraving that allows you to rapid reload and the ability to kill enemies below 25% health. You will do so much damage. You can one-shot most bosses.
There's one. I can't remember if it's a Teppo itself or if it's an attachment that you can get that lets you fire. It automatically fires 2 shots instead of 1.
Yep, there's that one too, which is a fun one to mess around with. That is my sniper rifle. I've got a build on that one where I can also do the 2 bullets, but I also have another engraving that allows me to drop enemies if they have less than 25% health. So that's a fun one.
I had one that does 1% more damage for every single point you have in Katana Mastery.
Yep.
But you can apply that. It's a universal. It's for all damage that you output.
Yeah.
So you look in there and you realize you put in like 70 points. That's an extra 70% of damage on top of everything else. So things stack really well. Like that's what I like, is you can play it any way you want. Great music as well. Good voice acting.
I believe
great cutscenes.
The music is like a combo. It's like they've got a Japanese crew that worked on it, and then they've got 2 other composers that worked on it as well.
I know I might be wrong, but there's I don't know if you guys were listening, certain points near the end. I don't know, maybe Michael, maybe you haven't had it yet if you're not at the last Yasuke mission, but there is parts where there's like action-y song, with singing. And I might be wrong. Hopefully I'm not. And if I am, please forgive me. It doesn't sound like it's Japanese. It sounds like it's some African chant.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's either African chants or Portuguese. That could also be.
And that was my thought. Like listening, I was like, I don't think it was Portuguese, because I don't understand Portuguese, but I've heard enough Portuguese and Spanish and Italian to get a feel for it. To me, it sounded like some form of traditional African song that they mixed with the Japanese instruments. And I thought, if that's the case, that was a cool thing. The idea that it's audibly a representation of who he's become. That he identifies more as Japanese than he does as from where he comes from. They don't mention which country he's come from, but it's obviously some African country that was a colony of Portugal, right? So we could probably look on a map and figure it out. To me, he sounded a lot like the professional fighter, what's his name, Francis Ngannou and he's like big UFC fighter, and he was in Jackass 4. I think he punches Aaron in the dick. He punches him like right in the dick. But yeah, he sounded like him, and I think that is Cameroon. Like, so it's a very similar accent. Like I thought, like, from the trailers, you'd think, oh, he sounds like generic African. Like, no, he sounds like somebody, like they were going for a specific country. So it wouldn't surprise me because there was a fair amount of thought put into into this big budget game, that they're picking people that are voice actors that are like, I guess, accent accurate, if that makes any sense.
Like for the most part, I'd say the voice cast is pretty good. When I get into my bad point, which we're going to get into in just a moment here, I did have a person come in and watch me play for about 30 or 40 minutes, and I would consider them fairly knowledgeable in Japanese culture, because they watch a lot of Japanese movies, and they are definitely into that whole Kurosawa thing. So I guess we're just going to jump into that right now. So let's talk about the bad about this game. As I'm going on with this point, my friend who watched me play said the main cast is really good, but some of the side characters, some of the non-essential player characters, like, holy racism, Batman. I don't know personally, but I thought some of these are a little stereotypical, but whatever. It's passable. Yeah, it's part of the story.
But at the same time, I found, to your point, everybody that wasn't one of the 2 main characters in this game, and maybe what's his name, the young boy,
Junjiro,
every other person but those 3 looked like they were just cookie cutter randomized within their own game engine.
That's something that he noticed too. My friend who watched this with me said, okay,
the level of quality between the different exactly who's a main character, who's a significant side character, and who's just generic NPC.
Because most of the side characters look really generic. Junjiro actually probably looks... He's also one of the few children in the entire game. So it's like they clearly designed him to be unique. Almost everybody else looks like, even other companions you can get, they all look the same. And by look the same, I mean they don't look the same as in like the exact same face. They all look like the other random NPCs. The only way you can tell them apart is by their clothing.
Yeah, they all were built within the same kind of parameters of the NPC creator, whatever the hell they did.
Yeah, whereas the main characters and maybe Junjiro look like they were maybe face captured from a real person.
I think the older gentleman that you
Oren?
meet, yeah, the older gentleman that was with Junjiro, that character is the only other like NPC character that actually seems significantly different.
Nobunaga, I think, looks good.
And Nobunaga, obviously.
Yeah.
But it seems like all the characters that were introduced at the very beginning of the game, maybe when the game was in first development, and then they just had to
basically
the rest.
Yeah, there are points of this where, pardon me, where it does seem like things are a little bit rushed. What I was mentioning before, when it comes to certain NPCs that you can encounter in the world, randomized, it does seem like there's like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
There's like a random seed where it generates from a pool of a few characters.
Yeah, and it's like, we're going to pull this asset, and this asset. So here's a new NPC, and here's a voice that was recorded. Like, okay, fine, that's a little weird. One of the new things I found, and this will definitely come up a little bit more in the ugly, is when the person's there, the model's there, it's reacting with you, but it looks like the T1000, and all the textures are missing, so that's fun.
Okay, that didn't happen on PC. I'll tell you that.
I've got some screenshots.
I never encountered something like that.
But yeah, in terms of bad, and this will be a very big talking point for us, the worst thing this game has going for it is it's going to be compared to Ghosts of Tsushima, which is done by Sucker Punch about 5 years ago. And it sucks to say, I really don't want to say this, but Ghosts, in a lot of ways, is a more compelling game. Now, that being said, Jin Sakai is a wonderful protagonist, deep. You care about their journey. You care about all the people he meets along the way. With Assassin's Creed Shadows, Naoe and Yasuke are likable. Junjiro, likable. Junjiro, like him. Anybody else, maybe Yaya, I don't care. And that's really unfortunate because I think there's some great writing in this game and nothing that's going to move me like Jin Sakai and Ghost of Tsushima. And that's a real shame.
I think the main problem that I have, Naoe's story is classic revenge story. We've seen it a million times before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, straight up when we get introduced to our armada of bad guys, I'm like, well, I'm gonna kill all you motherfuckers.
Yeah, like it was good that way. But does it not feel very much disjointed? Like all of the storylines in this felt like they were cookie cutter from different studios put together into one.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. It's that all these different studios are working on different elements, and whoever was the director just didn't have enough cohesion between all these teams, because there's too many teams to actually put it into a full game that feels complete.
And that doesn't mean that this is a bad game. Like, this is still, I would say honestly, outside of technical issues, which is part of the ugly we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Outside of technical issues, this is a good, if not great, game.
Yes.
Its problem is, I don't know which was in development first. I would assume that Tsushima was in development first because it came out 5 years ago. It had to have been in development 4 or 5 years before that minimum anyway. So it was probably in development. This was probably in the concept stage around the same time. But a game that came out the previous generation 5 years ago that has a very, very similar premise. I am actually surprised that they kept the story here for Yaoi as close as it was, because this is very similar. And not only that, like, you can't talk about this game in a bubble without talking about how similar it was. You have at the beginning of the game, they don't really do it after that, but at the beginning of the game, follow the dog to find for a storyline. Well, is that similar to follow the fox or follow it was follow the foxes, and then there were like, was it cats or something, or birds or something in the expansion? They dropped that pretty quickly here, but it's, you have the same things. It's like, oh, go to the spot to meditate. They had similar things there. The path, the biggest one is the parkour pathways to find a one piece of loot at the very end. It is almost identical. And I don't mean, oh, it's a similar concept. they're almost identical in what you
Now,
do and how you get there.
Now, I had an interesting issue with this. I can probably explain this a little bit more in ugly, but I'll touch on it here for a moment. So those pathways Alex is talking about, they're usually called like the path of serenity, the path of courage, or whatever. I found a legendary chest by accident because I was parkouring over everything. I'm like, I don't want to walk on the fucking road. I don't want to do this. And I landed right on top of a legendary chest. I'm like, oh, well, that's a nice surprise. So that was fucking irritating. The bad in this game, the traversal system. And that's something that Ghost of Tsushima did better because you wanted to explore everything, every part of the map. You're like, I wonder what's up there. Here, the map, it's huge. Some of it looks great, but other parts of it, it's very sparsely populated. I spent more parts of this game wandering through trees and climbing up hills. I've discovered the Assassin League's #1 weakness. It is not the fucking Templars. It's the fact that they're not wearing goddamn Nike cross trainers, because the world's worst enemy is fucking loose gravel.
You cannot travel with the horse.
No.
Because the way this game is designed, I know it's based on real world locations, but like, why have an animal that can move fast if you can't turn on a dime when everything in this is twisty turns, getting knocked over by things, Ronan knocking you off your horse? I never used the horse.
I think I used it. I literally counted today. I used the horse 5 times. I never bought any of the cosmetics for the horse. We'll talk about that. But it's like, I seem to recall, could you not just mark a thing in one of the other games? Maybe I'm thinking of Ghost of Tsushima, where you could mark a thing and you could just have your horse auto ride you there.
Yeah, there's no auto. There, I was like, is there an auto? No, there isn't.
There's auto in, because I recently have booted them all up to play, right? There's auto in Origins, Odyssey, and Syndicate.
Valhalla? Oh, and Syndicate, okay. Yeah, so it's like, feels like a missed opportunity, and this is something that Ghosts did better and less obtrusively and more immersively.
Also,
so in this game,
fast travel. You can fast travel anywhere, at any point in that game, and it's 5 years old. And fidelity wise, I will say this: I think in the cutscenes, the close-ups on faces are better if you have all the settings on max here in Shadows. But I think the actual world, while much more filled with foliage, there's more leaves, there's more rain, there's more grass, there's more individual strands of things here in Shadow. I think visually it's more impressive still to this day with Ghost. Just that world. And I know it's
and just to point this out, I actually booted up Ghosts.
Yeah, because you have
a little while. Version. Yeah, because I have the PC version. I booted up Ghosts. Yeah, no, this game it's prettier. It's prettier.
One thing that I messed around to talk about visual things here. I'm a photo mode guy. I like to take a lot of photos. I actually shared some in our little group chat saying, hey guys, look at the photo. Like, I know how to make an Ubisoft game look good. I really do, if I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. And I took some really visual, impressive pictures. Now, when I compare those to the ones with Ghost of Tsushima had a much more robust photo mode. Like, you could change the expression on Jin's face. You could hide NPCs. You could choose a lot more visual options with it. Here, it's a lot more limiting, which really sucks because it took me a long time to get the lighting right, to get it reflecting off of Nawe's Tanto, or to get it reflecting off of Yasuke's Teppo. Like, I love creating dramatic shots or things that just look good. I like to be the guy who creates the shots for the back of the box. That is what I do. And here, it's not, the tool set is not as good as I would like. And even I seem to recall Sucker Punch doing other things to their photo mode, constantly updating it to give you more options.
Well, that's also just like all of the Sony games share their tech, so the photo mode has been iterated upon from multiple studios.
Yeah, like
so
it's
all that
tech
is just robust as hell.
So and for those listening, like, we're not trying to be unfair, but you cannot, with this particular title, you cannot talk about it without doing direct comparisons.
You have to. And And then even now we have to talk about Rise of the Ronin, which was not as well received. In fact, I watched one review today that said it's a very divisive game. It's not a bad game, it's just very divisive. And it's the exact same setting.
It's having just gone through the PC version. The PC version's kind of messy, but the game overall is kind of two different games in one. Rise of Ronin is weird.
Whereas here, like the reason I keep mentioning it is Tsushima is so similar. Now, obviously, there's some different aspects when it comes to day-night cycles.
And seasons, which I thought was pretty cool.
The season system is pretty cool. My biggest gripe with this game was that there is so many different mechanics, and it throws them at you so fast and furious that you start to lose sight of, wait, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. There's a bit of that. I still enjoyed my time. I guess we should probably get to the ugly, because it's not the gripe fest. It's just feeling the ugly part to me. I'll start with this. It feels to me like it's still almost a year from being perfect.
Yes,
and that is very, very surprising, seeing as this was originally targeting a 2022 release, and if you remember, I think it was 2022 or 2023 at the latest. And Mirage
got pushed.
Mirage got taken from being an expansion that was supposed to be a 2021 expansion for Valhalla and turned into a full game where they increased it from like a 10-hour game to a 25-hour game. And it got pushed to 2023. So you're like, okay, so that was going to sort of fill the gap because they needed an extra year. And then they still needed 2 more years. Like, this is a game that and
they planned it for 2023, and then they pushed it again to now.
Or
2024. I mean,
yeah, it was like early 2024, then summer, then October, then now, and that means that this game, at bare minimum, had to have been in development if the original plan was sometime targeting 2022 to early 2023. I think it was 2022 was the original plan. That means it was in development for 4 to 5 years before that. We're looking at almost 10 years, and there's still major graphical issues and bugs where you were being, stuck in things. I know that there was day one patches, but the issue here is a day one patch usually goes day one to the public, but to pull the curtain back a little bit, for reviewers, usually a day one patch is available a week or 2 or even 3 sometimes before the release for the reviewers. And if you're a very early reviewer and you get a game, some people get games 6-8 weeks or more ahead of time. In some cases you have to keep that in mind when you're reviewing it. The day one patch didn't go live until like a day or 2 before release here. And so the builds that we were working with is what essentially you would think was what they were planning to release in the fall before they did the very last minute push. There is no way that this game could have come out without the day one patch at all.
Yeah, like I'm playing on PlayStation 5, and some of the issues I would have massive frame rate stutters where the world would just stop. I'd have to wait 15 to 30 seconds, then the world would catch up. I go, okay, fine. What I've happened since the day one patch, which I started playing last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago. So I've had this game for about 2 weeks, and I started having more problems after the patch. And weirdly enough, too, I started getting hard crashes more since the patch. As of now, I've put over 80 hours into this game. I've had 5 hard crashes. I've lost only 15 minutes of gameplay, which is nice. However, I did discover a bug, and hopefully as of this recording, it's been fixed. But I'm going to tell you guys now, do not go into a menu. The second you pick up a piece of gear, you will lose it forever.
On
PlayStation 5. I lost.
I can confirm that does not happen on PC, but on PC, you can be 9 times out of 10, you cannot, once you've left your home base, equip any new equipment to Naue. You could do it to Yasuke, but when you switch to Naue, it says that it thinks that you're in combat all the time and you cannot exit, and going back to your home base doesn't work. You have to go back to your home base, exit the game, reopen the game.
Yeah.
And
I've experienced situations even when I'm fast traveling, it takes a few minutes. It takes like maybe you need to wait like maybe a minute to go in and change stuff in your menu.
Yeah, I would also lose my HUD constantly, where basically if I was trying to navigate to somewhere, it would just disappear. I'd have to wait minutes for it to come back, or I'd have to go into the menu or force myself to go into the Animus store, come back out, and then it's mysteriously back. I was able to repeat that multiple times. As of right now, I still have that experience because I haven't done 100% completion. I'm just doing a little bit of mop-up.
I have everything on dynamic, so...
Yeah, for me, it's like, holy shit.
And for me, I had it on. I had my settings for like large text, everything on the way I need it for visually. And I will say, on PC, it's mostly the frame rate that's the issue. Other than a few times I got stuck in walls and stuff, those are things that are going to be patched out. The performance on PC is the roughest thing. They need to do something to either enable the ability to turn off ray tracing so you can go and have the console experience like on the Series S, or on the frame rate mode where it goes into traditional bake lighting.
I mean, like
currently it's not available at all. You have to have ray tracing on, and their ray tracing implementation is really not optimized for anything below a 50 series card. And good fucking luck getting one for less than $2,000.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like when I booted up the Series X version, I was like, all right, got everything set up. I was going to play on quality mode. Go through the first little bit, and I keep getting frame stutters, and I'm like, nope, not happening. If it was just a solid 30 FPS, no frame stuttering whatsoever in quality mode, I would have played it that way. But because of the fact that it has those frame stutters, even on a console,
and you have it hooked up to a VRR monitor, so you can theoretically smooth it out, but it's the frame pacing that's off.
Yeah.
And I'm playing it on a big 65-inch TV that only is 60 hertz, but it's still, I had to put it down to 30 and it would drop down to like 15. So that's my ugly. That's a performance issue. I still think the game is like really good, but
the overall game under the hood is still decent and fun to play. It's just all the other stuff around that have surrounded it is just kind of a little disjointed here and there, a little messy. It feels like they created all these different studios that worked on this game, which, by the way,
there's a lot.
Alex showed us that it's like a half hour worth of credits.
Yeah, I beat the game, and I'll say this, without spoiling the story, it's abrupt, surprising, almost infuriatingly so, and I was like, well, I got to see if there's any like mid-credit rolls or anything. There is stuff that happens after the credits, and you have like you can go back in the world to complete things, standard stuff that you see. But there's a fast forward option. I wanted to be able to read the text, so I didn't want to skip it. But the fast forward option, I had to hold the trigger button down, the R2 trigger, for 31 minutes, and the credits went through like 4 or 5 full songs, and there were entire gaps where there was silence while the text was going before it loaded the next song. And I'm going, dude, I have never seen this many people work on it. I know it was Ubisoft Quebec is the main studio. And they're very talented people, but you can see for the amount of people that worked on it, I don't see why after 7 to 10 years of development, it still was in this state of performance on PC. And I was like, guys, you got to tell me if it's like this when you guys beat it, because like what the performance is like, because the ugliest thing here is that even with multiple delays, there is still major performance issues.
Yeah.
Everything else is great. It's a great game. There is going to be 2 factors that I think people can't get out of their head. One is the performance until they patch that is rough. It's still a fun game. And the other point is, if you've played Ghost of Tsushima, this feels like a quick copycat, even though they were in development probably at the same time. It's just that one got started slightly before the other. One happens to be something that would be considered like a Game of the Year contender. This might be a Game of the Year contender once it's patched. We don't know how things are going to work with other games coming out this year.
And also it has that all the DLC that it's going to eventually get.
Yeah, and like that they know at Ubisoft that something was not right with their whole launch and the issues with what's been going on with their company that's outside of the scope of this discussion, that they canceled the expansion pass. And for anybody that pre-ordered the game so that they knew, I guess, some, what their demand was going to be, anybody that pre-ordered the game is getting the expansion, which is a 10 to 12 hour expansion, for free. They have not announced what the expansion is going to cost in the future for people that didn't pre-order it. So if you haven't pre-ordered it and you're listening to us, you're like, yeah, you know what, I'll get it. I want to get it when it's cheaper, or I'm going to wait till there's a sale and I know that there's been patches for it. And that's going to be a lot of people. We know, like Ubisoft's trends, that's going to be a lot of people. That who knows what they're going to have to pay for the extra DLC. I'm looking forward to it, but that there's going to be, that they knew that something was going to be rocky when it came to the release, that they're giving away with the pre-order instead of doing an ultimate gold pack, whatever.
And that's something that we should probably mention too. When we reviewed this game, normally Ubisoft would give us the super edition or whatever, the best edition possible. This is the first time we didn't get that.
Yes,
and
we did because there isn't one.
We did because there isn't one.
That's so weird because like all we got was the extra dog mission, but if you got the digital deluxe,
that's all.
That's all there is.
There isn't.
That's all there is, Mike.
Okay. Well, no. Let me finish my thought before you cut me off. What I was gonna say, you get an extra bunch of cosmetics, which is the dragon armor, and you get the expansion, which is claws of I can't pronounce that word, and you got a few more cosmetic items. This seems, in terms of, I guess, additions, I feel like Valhalla gave you a lot. Odyssey gave you a lot, if I remember correctly.
Oh, and they're crazy, but they had multiple expansions planned. Right?
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's a little weird. Like this one felt not as robust in that regard because, like I said, I always get the super editions for any Assassin's Creed game. That's just how I kind of dig it. But yeah, I would be in agreement with Ken and Alex. It's a fun game. It's a good game. But it depends on which Japanese game you've played first. Have you played Rise of the Ronin first? Have you played Ghost of Tsushima first? Or did you play this first? So anybody who's on the fence right now, which of these games do you play if you want to have that feudal Japanese experience? Which one do you start with if you still want to play this game? Do you play this first and then move on to Ghosts?
If you're playing it on Xbox, it's a no-brainer. It's this game. Because they don't have the option for the others, right? Because the others were only PlayStation and then went to PC. So if you're playing on Xbox and
you've got no choice,
and you don't have a PlayStation and you don't have a high-end and you have to have a high-end PC, we're talking $2,000 or more.
What was that other game that came out a couple years ago that was like the Souls-like? That was the Japanese game. Ken, you would know
Sekiro.
That's
Sekiro.
But that's a different gameplay style entirely.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like this, if you don't have a super high-end PC, like I mean really truly super high-end PC, if you don't have that, you don't have a PlayStation, and you have an Xbox, this is still a great game.
Oh
and
yeah, 100%
perform well. And
I didn't, and playing on Xbox, I didn't have as many issues as Mike did on PlayStation,
which really surprised me because I always thought that Assassin's Creed games, in my experience, have been optimized for PlayStation. I've never had this level of problems, and I've played everything.
To be fair, I think Microsoft paid for the marketing for this. I forget.
I don't know because it's not part of the Game Pass or anything, but it's also
it'll be on Game Pass in like a year.
It'll be one of those things. But I think that a lot of people are waiting for probably a price drop because it's generally how they work. But also like this is a game that if you're going to play it, on PC, you are going to have to wait till there's patches because you will be very, very upset that you're having to have such a high-end PC to play it. And if you're playing it on consoles, there might be patches over the next couple of weeks anyway too. So I mean, it's still a really fun game. I think if you're on Xbox and you're somebody who saw what happened on PlayStation with Ghost of Tsushima, and you were envious, and you also realized that now you don't have a PlayStation, you can't afford it. It's a pricey device. It's gone up in price. This is a great game, and you won't feel like you're being left out. Like,
exactly.
It is great. If you're somebody who is a super diehard Tsushima fan, and you're like, well,
it's a holdover.
I want more of that. You'll get more of that from this.
Yeah.
You won't get better than.
You're someone that's chomping at the bit for Ghost of Yote in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great holdover for that.
And that brings us back to the ugly. And again, this discussion on this, I feel like as much as I would like them to have waited maybe a few more months to release this, I think when they probably saw Yote announced, and they went, we can't wait.
Yeah.
Because it would hurt both that game sales and this game if they came out within the same quarter.
Yeah. And I will say, if Shadows does anything really well, and we're going to start to wrap things up here, this game scratches that itch, because a lot of sentiment I've seen online is this was the pull the parachute moment for the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Yes.
Like, people have been wanting Japan for as long as I can remember. Like, my first Assassin's Creed game was
like
Assassin's Creed 2.
AC3.
Yeah, so we did have the China game, which was like a side scroller, but this is fun. I really had a good time with this. And for those of you who want a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, this game destroyed my sleep schedule. I have not been this involved in a game that wasn't Final Fantasy, that wasn't Persona, that wasn't Mass Effect, that wasn't Ghosts. This immersed me, and I really like that. Do I have complaints about it? Yeah, sure. Do I want my 80 hours back? No. I've really had a fantastic time with this. I can't wait to see what happens with the expansions. Naoe and Yasuke are some of my new favorite protagonists. My favorite will always be Edward Kenway, because Black Flag for life, and then Shay Cormac from Assassin's Creed Rogue.
Isn't that Matt Ryan?
Yes, it is actually.
Yes. Because I was
Constantine.
Because me going through playing all the different games, like I was like, wait a minute, there's Nolan North is he Ezio, I think.
Ezio, yeah.
Ezio.
Yep.
I don't know who Altera is, but whoever it is a terrible actor. I'm sorry. The voice was the accent was so bad. Like it was like early 90s.
There's a reason.
Not late 2000s. There's
a reason why they finished his story in Revelations.
They're like, yep, that's enough of that.
And there are other good voice actors throughout, but like I was listening, I'm like, is that Constantine? Like as I was listening, I'm like, that's Constantine, isn't it? But anyway,
yes.
Beyond that, and I like the twists and turns that the meta storyline has had throughout. I didn't recognize the voice actors in this, which is not necessarily a bad thing because they were great. But I think the most important thing here is you can pet so many cats.
Yeah,
have the best.
You can
cat
pet
rescue.
You can literally pet all the animals,
except the fox. You cannot pet the fox. I was very sad about that.
Fox are very sacred.
There's puppies you can pet and all this, but when you find the cat island,
yes,
it's not required to find, because there's a lot of areas you don't have to go to, but there are side missions for certain characters that if you make the right choices, they'll lead you there. It so happens I had already found the cat island ahead of time, but it will lead you there. And it's an island where there's like 30 or 40 different cats you can go up. There's kittens and that. And
the kittens are amazing.
And different types, like every time you pet a new type of animal, it will send a copy to your home base, which we didn't talk about because, to be honest, the home base building seemed very tacked on, and you just throw it together because it needs to be there. But there really isn't anything to talk about there other than the fact that you can have all your cats there.
Yeah, like I said, it's a pretty good Assassin's Creed game. I would dare say edging on great. Am I going to spend as much time? Did I enjoy my time with this as much as Black Flag? No.
Would you say it's the best one since Syndicate?
Yes.
Actually,
Odyssey was really good, and that's mostly because of Cassandra's story. However, Yasuke and Naoe, if this is the next, like, true next gen, if this is Ubisoft's, hey, we got to do something fucking now, you're on a great path. I really like what's
Yeah.
been done here. I think if you get some stronger writers, you're going to have a really great series. And if I had to pitch something to you guys now, I would love to see an Assassin's Creed done in the Old West, which could be really cool. Or give me Assassin's Creed Mexico.
Dude, I did not think we had talked about this previously. I hadn't thought about the Old West. Like, you're talking like, and I don't mean like you could do that, mix it with the Gold Rush, but you could do truly the Old West, like the expansion where they're finding stuff out there. That would be like in the Grand Canyon and stuff.
Yeah,
and like,
or like going to Utah. Yeah,
like in the Rockies, or like it turns out that there's stuff hidden there, and that would work. And we had talked when we recorded previously, just off air, that you said Mexico. It looks like the next one, Hexa, is going to be somewhere in Eastern Europe, and it looks like witch hunting. So probably, I would assume
Assassin's Creed Castlevania, more or less.
Yeah,
cool.
or more like Assassin's Creed Resident Evil Village, that sort of idea.
I'm cool with that.
Like that aesthetic, that works. And we were talking about stuff like, I was like, oh, you could do Canada. I think if they wanted to do something to shake it up, because they've gone, I think Syndicate is the newest one in timeline, right? Because it's
yes,
it's like
that is the most
Victorian era. Yeah,
it's like 1880s, right? Like it's somewhere right around, it's like Jack the Ripper time. Like so you want to do something without making it super modern. You set the not the next one. You set one of the games in World War One.
Yes,
and not World War Two.
I mean, we did get, but like we've gotten glimpses of that through the Travels in Unity.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But
which would be great.
Like if you set it so that like World War One. How did World War One start? The assassination of
Archduke Ferdinand, I think.
Of the Kaiser.
Yes,
and well, all you have to say is that the Kaiser was was a Templar, and then who's he assassinated by? A Serbian, and you could set it in Eastern Europe and Western Europe and one of the assassins did it out in the open, and like that violates something. You could set it where it's like you violated
the creed, like you broke the Brotherhood.
You broke with the Brotherhood because and the reason they like it was bad enough that he broke it, but they didn't understand the implications because it's the first major public assassination that happened in the era of cameras.
Yeah, that's clever. See, Alex, maybe I should talk to somebody at Ubisoft.
An 8mm, like there was actual camera. There's like actual footage of these things happening, right? And they could be like you could set the game of like, look how disastrous World War One happens, and they're like, oh my god, the assassins are even like, we caused this because we look how big this was. We have to change how we act. We don't just have to work in the shadows. We have to be completely out of the open, because in an age, of open information and communication, what happens, you could totally set it as like the setup, and even the Templars themselves could see, like you could set it up so that like World War One and World War Two, after World War One and World War Two, they're like, hey, we have to do something where we're like not, we don't exert our power
affecting the rest of the world,
because it gets to the point where there's too many eyes on both organizations, and that's how you get Abstergo, and you get all these things popping up in the wake of technology. But I do think World War One is a prime setting, because imagine you're an assassin and you're going into the trenches, and you're doing trench raids, and you have to go into the trenches, hide amongst, maybe you even have to put on other people's gear, and you have to hide amongst like foreign soldiers, and you have to go, have to kill like an intelligence officer and leave without being caught. Like, there's a lot of, you could return it more to a stealth thing for that kind of World War One game. And like you said, Mexico and South America, there's a lot of stuff you could do if you set that thing in Brazil.
Yeah, there's so much cool shit. So, like I said, the Assassin's Creed series, I think this is a really good return to form. I think Yasuke and Naoe are more likable than Ivor. Maybe not as cool as Basim, but definitely the most likable protagonist since Jacob and Evie Fry. So this is great. Like I said, I really enjoy this game. I do recommend picking this up when it goes on sale. And this will hold you over till Yote, which comes out later on this year on PlayStation and inevitably on PC later on. But yeah, obviously, I had a great time. So I guess final thoughts from you, Ken, and then we'll have Alex close out the show.
So this is as a long fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, I got burned with 3 and then on and off throughout the last few decade or so. But this is closer to the Assassin's Creed of old, but also incorporating the good parts of the new stuff. And I think they found a good balance. It's just, you might need to tweak it here or there in the future. Overall, a decent enough package. And if you're an Xbox user, 100%, I would recommend picking it up.
All right, Alex, and your thoughts?
If you have a very high-end PC and you can deal with having to customize your settings and fingers crossed that they fix with patches, then it's a no-brainer. You can buy and play and have a really good time at day one here, or I guess we're week 1 in.
And if you're on PC, it's on Steam. So
yes, yeah. So I should say that I played it through the Ubisoft Connect. That's how I was sent it, which it's available through them directly. And it's if you have, actually, here's what I'm going to recommend. If you're playing it on PC. Now, consoles, you guys have, you mentioned, a lot of people are probably going to wait till there's a sale because of some performance issues and whatnot. But PC, you can buy it on Steam if you want to play it on Steam. Or, I'm going to suggest this right now. If you have a good enough computer, if you have a 30 series video card and you're on like 11th or 12th gen or newer Intel or whatever the equivalent for AMD is, and you're on the fence, you're not sure how the performance is going to be, you're not sure, whatever, you can just pay for a month of Ubisoft Plus. It's $20 and it includes this game as part of the,
that's a good way to play it.
And it includes and also if you choose to stay with the system, they're running a deal right now. Like, we're not sponsored by this. I was looking, my brother mentioned to me, he's like, hey, should I get Ubisoft Plus? And I said, oh, let me get a month and I'll check it out, because they're running a deal and it's like 40 or 50% off if you buy a year. I wouldn't suggest buying a year ahead of time, but if you do like it, you can go ahead. But you can pay like $20 right now, get a month to play it. And if you like it within that month, you can either purchase it at a discount, keep it, or keep the subscription going. But, super fans are going to buy it straight up already. Super fans have already pre-ordered it. But if you have a good enough PC, but again, if you're not sure, like if you've got like a 40, 80 or higher end above that, 40, 50 series, but 40, 80 or above, you're fine. You can just buy it, no problem. If you're somebody who's using a 30 series or an equivalent with AMD, and you're unsure and you're not sure if you're going to like it or whatever, $20. Pay the subscription, because then, even if the game, let's say this game doesn't play for you very well, you then get access to every other Assassin's Creed ever made, and it will work. Some of the games might not work with Windows 10/Windows 11, but everything from Odyssey onward does, in the modern style, this RPG style that they have. So you've got that. You'd have the option, you could play other games for the rest of the month if that's what you wanted. So I'm going to recommend it. Buy it on Steam if you have a high-end PC that is going to work with it. And if you're somebody who wants to test it or sample it or get into the games and other games that Ubisoft makes it, maybe give that 1 month trial. I know a lot of people that do that. They'll wait till there's a game or two that they want to play, pay for a month of subscription, play it, and then they're done with it. It's like a rental at that point, right? So it's replaced, like back in the day, Mike, what would we have said? We would have said, make this a Blockbuster rental.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unless you're a super fan or you want to wait till there's a sale, but make it a Blockbuster rental. And we used to say that when I first joined TWIG, but now that there's no Blockbuster,
exactly.
If you have a PC, this is a way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to close out this review discussion with one of my more interesting quotes from the Assassin's Creed franchise, and I hope this lets things move forward in a good way. And it comes from Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins, and he says, I cannot shed my past like a snake sheds its skin. So let this be the beginning of something great and wonderful. So hopefully all of you will have a fun time playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. Let us know your thoughts. Feedback at thisweekingeek.net. You can find us on Blue Sky. Communicate with us that way. So for This Week in Geek, we have been Alex and Ken. I've been Mike the Birdman saying we'll see you around the shadows.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.